Hello and welcome to this fall's 2017 Focus Friday. This is our first Focus Friday of the semester. This is actually year 2 that we've done Focus Fridays. And last year it was a new initiative that the Huntsman School of Business started up in starting Focus Fridays, and it has been a successful event. It's been one of our students, some of our favorite events that we've been able to attend. We've had at Focus Fridays in the past, we've had over 22 CEOs and presidents and those that are owners of companies, as well as we've had almost 3,000 students come to Focus Fridays within the past. So we are beyond excited and thrilled to have each of you here. We want to welcome students, faculty, individuals from the Valley and other places to be here with us today. So thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Dean Dave Patel, and he'll go ahead and introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. We've been, I think I've sort of started a little bit of tradition because I always make a comment about the weather and this great space. But it's been smoky all week in Cache Valley, so we're happy to be able to at least see a little bit of the beautiful view from here. Those of you who are here, the freshmen for the first time, the purpose of this part of the Focus Fridays Leadership Forum is to talk about big picture leadership. So we don't really get into the nitty-gritty of any specific business, but we want to showcase for you from CEOs about what their greatest challenges are when it comes to leadership and running large and small organizations. So we're just really excited to start off this year with one of the great businesses, not just of Utah, but of the Intermountain West, the Larry H. Miller Group of Companies. We've got a big part of their leadership team here. We're going to start off with our alumnus, the CEO of Larry H. Miller Group, Clark Whitworth, and then we'll bring up a couple of other group presidents of LHM in a few minutes. So please help me welcome Clark Whitworth. So Clark, you've been with the company for a little over 22 years. You're CEO, been CEO for a little over 2 years, CFO before that. We'll get to all of that, but I want to go back in time here. So can you tell us a little bit about your early years? Where did you grow up?
Well, I want to correct one thing. Actually, I've been with the group now 30 years.
30 years.
I spent 22 with Larry, and Larry passed away 8 years ago, so it's now been 30. In fact, September 1st was my 30th. I'm starting to sound like Larry, focusing on specifics. I actually grew up in Bountiful, Utah. My dad went to Utah State. My family's from Brigham and Corinne, Utah, and so I've always been a loyal Aggie. One of the things, if you go back into the business, into the accounting, is it School of Accountancy now? You'll find a plaque up there, and on it is the top graduating accountant, and that was my father back in 1952. And if you look on through it, you don't see my name anywhere. And for just cause, I was not that great. But always loved Utah State. As a young kid, got to come up and watch a lot of games. And when I was a senior in high school, they had a math, I don't know what they call it, test up here to try to qualify for a scholarship. And I came up and had a weekend. The school sponsored it and got to stay in that wonderful hotel. I don't know if you even know it. There's a little motel just east of here. It still exists. I don't know if it's a hotel anymore. Got to spend a Friday and a Saturday here, and I had the experience of a lifetime. And I says, Utah State it is all the way. And the other young man that came up with me, he's an Aggie as well. So that's
great. That's great. So your dad, a great graduate of our accounting program. So what were some of did they influence your parents influence your leadership style that you have today?
Well, I wish my dad did more, but he passed away when I was very young. And my mother did have a lot of influence on my leadership, I guess, and learning from her and watching her handle a family of 4 and hold them together. She only had a high school education, but through hard work, determination, she did I like to think, a good job.
So when you were in college here, did you have an idea of what you want to do for a career?
Yes, I did. I always wanted to be I can't believe it, an accountant, but more or less the CFO is what I always shot for. I want to be the CFO, and that was my focus.
So that picture you had in your mind of what a CFO is and does when you were in college, how does that match with when you actually were a CFO?
I'm going to have to say it was in a lot of ways similar. I watched my dad because he was the CFO of a company. It was just neat how he came home at times, late at times, and still would do some work at the table and stuff like that. And those were just impressive things, how dedicated he was and how organized he was and how involved he was in the business. He even took me on a Saturday to work at the business. And I thought that was real cool. As a young kid, I got to run around while he was working. So I think from that, I understood there was a lot of hard work involved, and my mother supported it well. And that's what drew me to it.
So you went from here to KPMG back when it was still Pete Marwick, right?
I did. I'm going to, before I go that far, I don't want to miss one thing. The best thing that happened to me here at Utah State is I met my wife. We just went to the room. We had a statistics class together. I looked across the hall and I said, I like that, the look of that lady. And that was it. It was right here in the old building. We went and saw the room. It was locked, but that's where we met. But right out of college, Dr. Hale, who was the head of the school, said, Clark, they're doing some interviews. Go over and go have that interview with KPMG. They were interviewing with the partner from New Orleans, John Fowler, and we went and I interviewed there, met them, and then they had a dinner down in Salt Lake. We went, met there again, and kind of had another interview. And then we were invited to go to New Orleans, and we flew down there, and it was, they flew us down. Anybody from the South? Anybody here from the South? They flew us down, and it was about March, okay? And it was a little rainy, he says. It's usually not rainy like this, but the weather, that was about the 2-week window when that wasn't really too humid or too hot. But other than that, it was 95 degrees and 95% humidity. But we had a great experience down in New Orleans. It was KPMG, and then we came back to Salt Lake.
With Deloitte.
With Deloitte.
And how long were you there?
It was with Deloitte. How many people in the School of Accountancy? Okay, great. I want you to stay with it. I stayed with them until I actually had fulfilled my 2-year commitment that I needed to be licensed and certified to the day. And then I went into private practice. But it was a great experience as well.
What did you take away from both of those experiences working for accounting firms that early in your career?
New Orleans was a very intense time. It was a big office, a lot of opportunity there. In fact, I met what I still think in the public accounting was my best manager, who was, her name was Kim Brown, and she was a great, great leader. That was the one that taught me a lot there, learned hard work. And when I say hard work, I would kiss my wife early on Monday morning, and we were off on a 2-hour drive to go where we were, and I worked, you were working 10, 12-hour days, sometimes longer, and then come back on Friday. And at that same time, I was studying for the CPA exam using the Becker course, and so I had to spend my Saturdays at the Becker course, and so there was a lot of hard work involved in that time.
So let's talk about your position today. So you're CEO of a company with, and you're going to correct me with the right number here, but around 11,000 employees. Is that?
Yeah, we're at 11,000. I don't know. Steve made a deal,
like
and we lost a few.
We'll talk about that later.
It'll be a good one to discuss. That really will be a good.
I
it
think
was the right decision.
I think there's a lot of questions about one that you lost, but we'll wait on that.
I don't think he's lost.
So
Okay,
lots of employees, lots of different lines of business. So what's a typical day for you?
A typical day for me.
There is no typical day.
I think there are a lot of things happen in relationship to how we've structured our company. In the structure of our organization, I don't want to get in all the details of it, but this organization has, I'll even reorganize it a little bit right now. We have three main operating organizations. We have the auto group, we have the sports and entertainment, and we have an automotive finance. We have two other major divisions, but they support those three main spearheads of the organization. One is our insurance, Total Care Auto, which supports the automotive group. Then we have our real estate that supports auto, sports and entertainment, and also our finance company. So what we have is we have four incredible presidents running those. Two of them are here today. So my life is pretty easy, just trying to make sure I do whatever these people need, clear anything out of the way to make sure things work well. We have a management company at the top that helps also support the family and helps them understand where things are and understand the direction and interface with the board. So the average day is, it's meetings.
Yeah. Lots of people.
Lots of people.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So the company originally started as a family-owned business, and it's transitioned. How does, and you've been through that whole thing, right? 30 years. So what were the challenges involved there?
Okay. When are we going to be done?
We can be here all
Okay.
day. As long as we keep Starks waiting here, we'll be here all
It'll be
day.
fine. The company started with Larry and Gail, and it started with an incredible leader, Larry, entrepreneur, whose goal was to own his own dealership. And I think it was, sometimes they say somebody doesn't know their own strength. Larry didn't know his own abilities because they were natural, innate abilities. And he took that one dealership and worked so hard that opportunities came, and Larry had such a drive. Larry couldn't pass up looking at any opportunity. And so the growth just naturally occurred, and he enjoyed it so much. And his wife was very supportive. And that's very important to remember. Your spouse needs to be very supportive, because it wasn't an 8-to-5 thing that Larry had going on. And she was very supportive of him and getting everything done that he needed to do to accomplish the things that he did. And it just kept growing and growing. And he had the auto group, and he understood cash flow so well. It was producing a lot. Then the opportunity for the Jazz came along, and he grabbed that because it was the right thing to do and kept going. But as in the case of almost all entrepreneurships, he had to be involved in everything. Larry was a very detail-oriented person and tried to be involved in everything. And because of his extremely high IQ, photographic memory, and just his drive that he could do that right up until about the time he passed away. And at the time he passed away, he had brought his oldest son, Greg, and gave him the reins about, about a year before he passed, 8 months before he passed away. He gave Greg the reins, and Greg was different than Larry. He'd learned a lot of Larry things, and he'd learned things from Larry that he wasn't going to do, that Larry did, and he strove to do that. And Greg was much more inclusive as far as relying on other people. But the business is still family owned, and Gail is the shareholder, owner, and definitely involved in the company from all aspects.
So how do those two differ, Larry and Gail, in their leadership style?
Wow. Almost, you can't even describe the difference. They're so different. Gail is a listener. Gail wants to let the leaders lead. Now, that doesn't mean Larry didn't. And Larry listened as well, but Larry needed to have the driving gloves on and have his hands on the steering wheel to make it and drive it.
So these two are hoping you're more like Gail than Larry. Or are you driving?
Oh, I don't think I'm driving the businesses at all. They drive their businesses 100%.
So let's,
and they can rebut it, and they can yeah about it. They had their chance. They had a person come in and do a 360 evaluation on me, and 26 people that I interact with had a chance to give their 2 cents worth, and believe me, they all did. But I didn't feel anybody saying it was too hands-on or giving them not enough latitude to do their job.
Yeah. So let's bring Dean and Steve up here.
And I am going to make one thing clear about leadership. And it's important that you understand our key leadership, these two and the others from our organization. All of them come from the top 4 universities in this state: Utah State, Weber State, Utah, and SUU. And we know there is another university in the state, and we keep trying to find someone that can fill one of the roles, but we just haven't been able to find one.
And you're referring to UVU.
Yes.
That's good. So, gentlemen, thank you. So, Dean Fitzpatrick here is responsible for Miller Automotive Operations. 61 dealerships thereabouts across 7 states. So it's not just about Utah. But more importantly for us, he's the father of Shelby Fitzpatrick Daines, who graduated from the Huntsman School just last May. That's why you're here. Steve is responsible for Miller Sports and Entertainment, and I was interested to learn that it's not just about the Jazz. So there's the Stars, the Bees, the Arena, a radio network, right? So it's a lot of different businesses. So Clark, let me ask you first question. So as you referred to, this is the core of your leadership team, 2 of the 3. So what do you look for them from them in their leadership role?
2 things: no surprises and no drama. And pretty much get that. It's interesting, they do have very, I don't want to say differing, but they have their own leadership styles. And a part of that's driven by the organizations that they manage, which tells you that a good leader adapts his leadership capabilities to the needs of the organization. And Dean does an incredible job. That automobile group with over 60 dealerships, and each dealership is like a business unto itself. And to manage those 60 leaders takes I don't want to say a firm hand, yes, not a strong hand, but a firm hand, and stability that reduces the amount of drama and fluctuation. A good, steady, direct hand that can give the direction. Steve is in a whole different arena, literally and figuratively. And we hope he's in an arena in a week, if everything goes well. But he has to deal with a lot more of the public involvement and making sure that we handle a lot of that as well, and dealing with a lot of different aspects that are businesses going in different directions that are very desperate, and he does a great job with that.
Great. So Dean, you've been in the automotive industry for a couple of decades. It's changed tremendously. I just think about the time, I still remember when my parents bought their first car a long time ago, and when I bought my last car a couple of years ago. What's the greatest challenge in that industry from a leadership perspective?
Well, first of all, before I go there, I'm going to need a little bit of help from all of you, if you wouldn't mind. I know you all came to hear about the automobile business today. And so when it's question and answer time, if you just throw out a few deals about the Jazz so Steve won't feel left out, it would really help, okay? But our business, the auto industry, like a lot of other industries, continue to evolve and change. I've been in it for a little over 30 years now, and within that period of time, technologies change, processes change, consumer expectations and desires change, and so a big part of what we do is making sure that we remain relevant in that industry. And so you've got to be willing to evolve as the industry and what expectations and what people are looking for continue to evolve.
Great. So just a couple questions about the business. So 61 dealerships, about, how many cars do you move a month or a year?
On a yearly basis, we'll sell about 120,000 cars at retail per year. So
And
about 10,000.
To sports entertainment by Clark, it was helpful to be able to apply some of those Miller tried and true principles. And so 3 years ago, went down to sports entertainment, and one of the things that was obvious is A, it's a business, but B, the Utah Jazz are more than a business. It's really a brand, and it's a platform for the state of Utah, and it's something that everybody rallies behind. And there's a sense of stewardship with the Jazz that's really meaningful. And when you think about 19,000 people coming to our arena, it is one of the single greatest sources of unity in our community. It doesn't matter what background you come from. When you get into that arena, you're a Jazz fan, and it brings people together. And so you feel that, and you want to build that brand, and you want to establish it even further, and you want to be proud of it and have all of our guests and fans be proud of it. And so the biggest thing right now that we were faced with was the fact that we had a 25-year-old arena. That's hard to believe for a lot of us that grew up here and remember when it opened up, but it was the second or third oldest arena in the NBA. And then some of our other facilities needed some investment, and so we've spent the last 2 years really working on an arena renovation, and that'll be completed within 30 days, and our practice facility will be renovated, and we can talk more about that later. But that's been the biggest challenge, I think, is focusing on the facilities, the physical aspect of the organization, knowing that it has ramifications for every other part of the business as well.
Right. So you mentioned the arena, so you've got lots of different businesses. How do you juggle that in your day-to-day?
I think, like Clark said, we try to have great people that manage each of the departments or the business and then support them. And at times, our role as leaders can be to create communication if it's lacking, to foster innovation because we ask the right questions or we make the right investments. And it's really to also prioritize where resources go at any given time. I heard somebody say recently that by the time something gets to your desk, it's a good idea. Right. Bad ideas usually don't make it that far up the line, and so then you have to prioritize what are the best ideas right now that will give us the biggest impact for the moment, knowing that you can't do everything at once, even though sometimes we try.
So you talked about people, so I want to open up for all three of you. Let me start with you, Steve. So how do you hire those people that you rely on? What are you looking for?
Well, I think it's about hiring and it's about retention. And, like with Gordon Hayward, he just didn't make the cut, so we didn't retain him. And you got to get the right people on the bus. I'm kidding. We can talk about that later if you want to as well. But everybody calm down. Everybody's always anxious to talk about Gordon Hayward, and just we can talk about that. What was the question? I'm sorry.
What are you looking for when you hire people?
So I really enjoy people that are curious, because you can learn finance and you can learn accounting. You can be a good seller, but really what you want is somebody who can think and who is curious to learn more, and then has the ability not only to learn, but sift through all of the information that's out there and be able to have wisdom to know what to focus on. And I think all of us want to be surrounded by people that are interesting. And so if you're hardworking and curious, and a baseline of just skill and intellect is needed, but beyond that, you want to be around people that ask good questions, that are curious, that are willing to take risk and try things. And I think when you have that combination of things, there's unique talent there.
Yeah. Dean, what do you look for when you hire?
I agree with all those. Attitude is a very, very big part of the equation. Drive, intellect, resiliency, just those type of things. We're a lot in this, I think a lot along the same lines there, where, a big part of what we do is develop, right? And so people have the right basic, the thought process is right, and some intelligence mixed in with that, then things seem to work out pretty well.
You want to share a little bit about how Pat goes about 24/7 searching for talent? I think that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, our business, when you look at it, the brick and mortar part of it is important. Every one of when we're looking at the automotive side, there's a significant investment in terms of facility, in terms of inventory, in terms of all those basic things. But by far and away, the major driver is people. And it's been mentioned before, but a lot of times a singular car dealership, a larger one, is a very significant business in and of its own. A lot of them, the larger ones, will do $250 million worth of business a year. And so the people part of the equation is so important. And in our world, the senior leadership of those dealerships are very important. And so we go about, a lot of our people, as they progress through their career, there's a lot of development that goes on within the company. And so a lot of our people work their way through our system. We've been very, very active in growing and creating more opportunities. And so sometimes we're outside of our operation as well. And so recruiting is definitely a part of that equation as well. And so we have some folks that are very adept at that, right? It's you never know what the future is going to bring, right? And so relationships are extremely important. And you may not have something that is relevant for anybody today other than that relationship, but down the road somewhere that may make a difference. And so it's just keeping that in mind, and the more people you meet and get to know and form relationships with, it's crazy how impactful that is as you move forward. So.
And that kind of leads into what I'd like to talk about on what we're seeking and how we're trying to find people. Where I'm positioned now, and even Dean and Steve, we're not hiring the people coming in at the grassroots, but we're always looking. And Larry was very good at that, and I hope I learned a little bit from that. Steve came through an interaction with Larry where Larry just said, "Right guy, I'll find a place for him." And about 15, 20 years ago, I ran into the CFO of Sportsman's Warehouse, who happens to be a graduate of Utah State University, and met him and said, "Larry, that's a guy we've got to get." And we really didn't get him until actually Larry had passed away, but we did. And he's now the CFO of the Automotive group, and he is a great asset. And we've had many others that have been that way. So what you see is you have the opportunity to see these people in their own natural space. And when you can see what a talent they are, that makes it easy to pick them. So Steve mentioned the two key things. He said, being curious, wanted to learn and everything, and hard work. Got to always be a hard worker. You never want to hire somebody who's not a hard worker. If you see somebody carting out right at 5, you say, we can check that box. That guy's not what we're looking for. And I'm not saying you just have to work for work's sake. Hard work means you're wise and effective. And when we see that in people and that they can think, those are the people you try to find places for. And it almost is backwards. You try to find a place for the person instead of having a place that you try to fill. If things are going well, when an opportunity arises, as like Dean said, we've developed enough people and they naturally fall into that slot.
So for these college students, that's what we hear a lot from CEOs. So what do they do to show that to you guys? One, at where you don't know them, you're just interviewing them for the first time, and then two, they've been working for you for a while, and you're looking for a different place for them.
Well, first of all, I think it's important you know what your strengths are, where you shine well, and you've got to naturally do it. If you're trying to grandstand wherever you are, that's another thing that really is not appealing. But when you can see a person get exposure to other people and other lines, that's where you're going to be able to show yourself the best. You do have to, and I don't want to use the word pay your dues, but you do have to go through and do the steps you need to do, but always be progressing. I mean, Steve started even in college. He went on, and Steve was student body president up at Weber State University. I'm sorry, at Weber State. But Steve got into a lot of other different areas and expanded and did what he did by running a campaign and other things and got exposed to a lot of people. Dean got in the car business before graduating from the U and realized this is a pretty good place to be. And as you perform, you get noticed. As you perform, you get noticed. And I stumbled into Larry, or Larry stumbled into me. And long story, he'd given us a mortgage loan, and I left the business where I was working, and he was afraid the mortgage wasn't going to get paid, so he hired me. And then from there, it just worked out. And it was a great opportunity. One thing you want to tie your star to, if you ever tie your star, rising star, make sure you tie it to somebody who's going to go somewhere. I've seen people make mistakes of aligning themselves with the person that maybe isn't going to get them to where they need to be. And if you really work hard and do your best, the cream always rises to the top. I mean, we have, you have 60 general managers. Some are better than others, and some have risen right to the top. It's a job that takes a lot out of an individual. You don't see people running that job for a long, long time. But when there's somebody who's moving up, they're noticed and they're talked about. You just got to be patient. I mean, we use the example of Steve. When Larry got him 10 years ago, it was pretty easy to see how he moved right up on through the tracks. And one thing that was really key about every one of these people I've talked about, they could get the task completed. You got to be able to carry it across the goal line. If you can't get it across the goal line, even though your ideas are great and you're a whiz bang at everything, if you can't complete the task, you'll be like a shooting star, a flash and then done. So.
That's great. So, Dean, any advice for students from your perspective?
Yeah, from a student standpoint, right now is be involved. The more involvement you have with different things at the university, it just shows an aptitude to not only go to school but to be involved in other things, whether it's athletics, whether it's student body opportunities, whether there's just a lot of opportunities on a college campus. And so, first of all, is be involved. Adding a little bit to what Clark had talked about, even all of us. I mean, you talk about it. There's everybody kind of comes from a different path, and each of you are kind of zeroing in on a different discipline within the business world, whether it may be accounting or finance or marketing or whatever the situation may be. And it's just important to, whatever your current responsibility is when you go to work and you start on the career, whatever that current responsibility is, that you do really, really well at that. And then more opportunity will, when you show the aptitude to be able to not only handle what you're currently doing, but also show an aptitude to be able to do more. That's how those opportunities come, right? It's making people aware that, hey, I'd like to do more. It's not about grandstanding, right? Integrity is a big part of the deal, but it really boils down to, when we watch folks come through our organization, is they take their current responsibility and do really well with it, and then show that they have an aptitude to do more. And when those opportunities come up, then they put themselves in a really, really good position to do more. And you just kind of go through that process and hopefully have some fun along the way. But that's kind of how we see things work. So.
Steve?
I think you need to be confident, because you can tell when somebody's confident, and not arrogant, but confident. And here's how I believe that you begin to become confident in your life. It's knowing who you are and what you want to do. Because sometimes you can tell when people are faking it. They like the idea of something more than they like the substance of that thing in reality. And usually you can see when that's the case. And so there's 3 questions that I was taught 20 years ago that I think are really impactful that you need to ask yourself. What am I good at? What do I love to do? And what will the world pay me to do? And when you can find something that aligns with those 3 things, I believe that you're going to be confident. And if you're confident, you're going to be successful. And so what are you good at? Clark was obviously good. He had some inclination towards numbers at a young age. His dad was very gifted with numbers. It's a skill set that's intuitive with Clark. You can see it if you're around him. You know that he's brilliant understanding cash flow, and he met his wife in a statistics class, for crying out loud. I mean, that's not like that's so he's just gifted in that area. It's natural to him, so he's good at it. I also think he loves it. And then the world paid him to do that thing, and he's been very successful. And there's a confidence that comes from that. Dean has a set of attributes that make him very good at what he does. He's a good leader. He's steady as they get, and those things are natural with Dean. And so ask yourself those questions. Don't fake it. And it's not going to be perfect. Sometimes there's this, and I understand that millennials sometimes, and maybe I'm a borderline millennial. Sometimes people say millennials don't love anything. You don't have to love your job to the point where, it's going to be the greatest thing in the world. Sometimes work is just work. And as Clark said, you pay your dues. But ultimately, if you're working towards something that you're good at, you love, and the world will pay you to do, you're going to be confident, you're going to be happy. I really believe that. And every one of you should be confident because you're doing great things.
That's great. So let's open it for our audience for questions. We've got people with mics. You can raise your hand. We'll get the mic to you.
Okay, this question is for Steve. I was told to give you some jazz questions.
Thank you.
But so, as most of us probably all know, the NBA is doing a lot of sponsorships with the patches on the jersey, and we're doing the Fight for the Fight. So, where other teams are doing more of sponsorships, we're doing this charity. What was the whole thought process behind that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. That's a great question. The thought of putting an advertisement on a jersey is somewhat controversial, and even for us, it was difficult because there's something pure about you have your city or your state or your team name on that jersey, and people wear it. And there's a psychology. If you're willing to put on a Jazz shirt or hat, that means that you're taking your fandom to a level of association and affiliation that creates a bond that's important. So adding to that a corporate sponsorship was difficult for us. Fortunately, the Miller family wants to do things the right way. It's not just about chasing dollars. And so because we know that, it allowed us to be able to go to market with some criteria that we wanted to fill. And one of those was, let's use it as a platform for the great economy in Utah. And ideally a tech company, because Silicon Slopes and what's taking place with our tech economy in Utah is really significant. We want to tell that story. And then if it can be something that we're proud of, then that would only add to that experience. And so we went to market on our naming rights deal for the arena, and Vivint Smart Home purchased that. And they were great partners. But what it did is we actually met with about 12 companies, and we were able to get in front of them and tell the story of the Jazz and the arena and what it means. One of the companies that was part of that process, but ultimately fell short of the naming rights for the arena, was Qualtrics. But we formed a relationship with Ryan Smith, their founder and CEO, and the management team. And so when the jersey patch deal came up, it was a natural call to make to them. And then just working together, we were creative, and I give them a lot of credit because they said, let's use it as a platform for good. And Fight for the Fight is their charity to raise money for cancer research. And then our head coach loved it because you have 5 players on the court. There's symmetry there. And our players loved it because they could feel proud that it's not just a company. It's not just a product. It's something that is a platform and that everybody can be impacted by cancer and rally around that. So I think our fans should feel good about it. We certainly do. And look, we're one of about 16 teams that sold it. That speaks to our market and the support that the community gives the Jazz as well. So it was fun. Thanks for asking that.
So this is another question for Steve. Recently, the Jazz have been involved in the process of signing free agents, and I'm wondering what Jazz management does to persuade free agents to sign with the Jazz.
Good question. So Dennis Lindsay is our general manager, and he has a tremendous background in basketball. He was at Houston for a lot of years and then San Antonio. And then our head coach, Quinn Snyder, was at Duke, coached high levels in college, and then worked his way through the NBA Development League, coached overseas. and has a great reputation as being a player's coach. And so when we are having conversations with free agents, ultimately you have to know that players want to win, and they want to go to a place where they feel like they can win and where they can be part of a system that aligns with what they want to do. And so the Jazz are the highest passing team in the NBA on a per 100 possessions basis. We set the most screens in the NBA. So players like that, right? Because they know that the ball is going to come to them. They're not going to play in a system where another guy is going to hold the ball for 18 seconds and then have to create with 4 seconds left, because that leads to bad shots for the other guys. And so what we have found is that players like Quinn's system. We're a high motion, high movement system. And then they like the overall program that we're building, and agents know about that. We had an agent come in town and say, you know, the ownership group is so stable and supportive. There's no drama here. And that's really appealing. Now, when we open our new facilities, we'll have what we believe to be the best facilities in the league, both on the practice facility side and the arena. Then you take the fact that our city is incredibly manageable, and you don't think about that. When you play for Brooklyn, it's 50 minutes to get from the practice facility to the arena, another hour to get to the airport. You times that by 41 home games, that's a lot of wear and tear and a lot of time away from the family. So we're a manageable city. We're a beautiful city. We have a great fan base. We have great facilities. We have a great head coach, and we have a tradition that's really based on winning and success. And so that's our story. Having said that, we know that we're not going to be attractive to every player, and that's okay. That makes our job. That makes us have to focus on what are the things that we look for. And Quinn was able to put together Jazz DNA, and we listed out what that is, and it's players that align with that. And we're really proud of our guys. We're proud of the type of people that we have on our team, and they fit that DNA. They want to be really good at defense. We have the best defensive player in the league without question on our team in Rudy Gobert. We have a really motivated young core that's going to be miserable to score on. I think Joe Ingles or Rudy said it's going to be like going to the dentist. And we pride ourselves on that. And we need our fans to rally behind that. When people come and play in our building, it's just going to be miserable for them. And then we have an exciting, promising players like Rodney Hood and Dante Exum and Donovan Mitchell. And so we're excited about it. But that's a little bit about what we look for, and that's a bit of our recruiting pitch as well. A few other things that I won't mention, but
While we wait for a question, let me just follow up on that. So in the end, from a leadership perspective, right, we're talking about culture.
Yeah.
Right. So the DNA that you talked about from Quinn.
Yeah.
So is there a culture from your perspective that you're promoting also for the entirety of the organization?
Fundamentally, and this goes back to Larry. Larry had some very unique traits that we've tried to instill throughout the organization. Even though we have many different directions that our businesses go, we try to have some fundamental. Larry always said, protect the legal, financial, and then Greg added moral well-being of the company. That's very fundamental. And one of the biggest ones for me, we have 4 things that we try to focus on: values, integrity, and Dean mentioned that. And that's one, if you compromise your integrity, you're not going to rise up. That's one, you've got to have integrity. Hard work. And these are the principles we try to teach everyone in our organization. Stewardship, and then giving service. We believe in giving service. That's one thing that Larry always did. The Miller family is very supportive of that. And when you can bring those together and then focus them into the specifics of what your organization does, you're going to be on solid ground. And so we do try to have the Miller way. Dean goes into a dealership and we acquire a new dealership. We go in and we try to Millerize it. Okay. Dean calls it gathering, which if you're gathering, that means there's the people that are there that don't understand the way we do business. And with integrity, we're not gonna tolerate that, and we make the changes. And it sometimes takes. We had to let him go. Integrity issue. And you could have swept it under, but it was that important that we have integrity in everything we do. So there are some very sound cultural ways of doing things that are definitely based in the foundation of this organization.
One thing just to add to that is, as we continue to grow, that foundation is critical because everybody as you teach that, it really applies to whether you're in the movie business or whether you're retailing automobiles or the jazz or whatever. That foundation is really important, and it's easy to, I wouldn't say easy, but it's important to where when everybody understands that, uh, a lot of good things happen.
I think you might have just touched on it, Clark. But for all of you guys, what's the best lesson or philosophy that you learned from Larry?
It's going to be an interesting combo of things. It is integrity, and Larry had the utmost integrity. And when I say integrity, it's beyond just saying, yes, no, honestly. It was, if there was a deal that was bad that we had somebody tied into through an agreement but was detrimental to them. We had one with the Marriott Corporation, and we had them for another 4 years, and it was going to be very painful for them. Larry said they didn't know, and we didn't know when we signed that we'd let it go, and he let it go. In the same vein, if somebody came and said, Larry, I know we got this signed agreement, but I don't want to do it because of this, Larry would let them out of it. He was so focused on being able to walk down the street, and if he ran into somebody that he'd done a deal with, he didn't want to say, "Ooh, crap! I wish I was on the other side of the street, so I didn't have to talk to him." And there were lessons, and he was consistent about it. Could he get upset? Oh man, you couldn't even understand how upset the man could be. And that was one little piece of advice I'd give you. There are going to be times in your career where things get bad. There were times in his career he was so upset with me that he probably didn't even want me around. Okay, and I took it, and you come back. If you let that knock you down, you're going to limit yourself. I mean, I think each one of us up here on this stand had an opportunity to have some conversations with Larry that you never want to have again. Okay, and I just throw that in. So that was the lesson I learned. I try not to do that to people, and I'm not trying to criticize Larry. It was a thing he wished he didn't do. He would always circle back after his bad behavior, and in his way, put you under his wing. And that was the other thing. Even as mad and as furious as he was, he always had your back. And I think you felt that. You he really cared about you and how you did. So those were the lessons I learned.
Well, that was integrity is the first thing that came to my mind, but I'll pick another great trait of Larry's, and that was just hard work. Larry just flat out could outwork people, and he had a will to get things accomplished that was amazing. And there are seasons of life where it just requires you to put in extraordinary effort. Our team has put in extraordinary effort the last 6 months on this arena renovation. Late nights. I haven't been home before 8 o'clock this whole week. And you just know why, though. There's a purpose behind it. It's a once in a lifetime project that we chose to do in one off season. And as long as your wife understands that vision and she knows that it's going to get better at some point in the future, then she can support that. He can support that depending on your circumstances. And so work is one of the principles that you just can't get around. It leads to success. But like Clark just mentioned, any virtue can become a vice if you take it too far. And with Larry, that virtue at times became a vice. And he knew at the end of his life that he had worked too hard and that he had neglected other aspects of his life. And so there's got to be that moderation at times. But hard work is a thread that's going to run through every bit of success.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, he had a very, very huge expectation from those around him, right? And so he surrounded himself with a lot of folks that could run with him, so to speak. But he was also very loyal and very driven, very loyal. think that sums him up. Yeah.
Permanently fired. Permanently fired.
Sorry, you want to?
So recently, the Utah Jazz has been put into a trust, from what I understood. Could you possibly explain that a little bit better to us, how it works?
It was an estate planning issue, but also a demonstration to the state of where the Miller family wanted to go. And without getting into too much detail, as ownership would pass, anytime you have ownership pass from a generation, there can end up being an estate tax, and there can be a very large acquisition price, something that would have caused the family to have a hard time to put it together. So to make sure that this wonderful team could stay in Utah, they were able to put it into a trust that will go in. It's called a legacy trust, which will last beyond any of us here, and it will be able to facilitate the Jazz staying in Utah. It's that simple.
What it also means in practical terms, the Houston Rockets just were sold for over $2 billion this week. What it means is that the Miller family walked away from some amount of money that starts with a B in all likelihood, especially if a team would buy it and move it out of state, an ownership group. And so that's a remarkable gift to the community to walk away from that. And what they've always said is if they sold the Jazz, it wouldn't change their lives. And that's really true. It's a remarkable thing if you just think about what they did with that move.
I love what you all have to say about pursuing your strengths and really developing these kinds of ethics of value, integrity, and hard work. And when I kind of put all of those together and hearing your stories from Larry H. Miller, what that kind of comes down to for me is leadership. And it's apparent that he's been able to pass those qualities on to the three of you, and you've been able to develop these leadership skills needed to continue to manage the company successfully, whether that's automotive or sports and entertainment, successfully after he's gone. So my question is, what advice do you have for us to be able to cultivate leadership skills, to be able to rise to the top and separate ourselves from all of the other people that graduate with similar degrees, but to become the people, like you mentioned, and to have those relationships. So we're that person you're seeking to bring onto the company because you have to find a position for us.
So I guess this is an academic setting. I would ask, can leadership be taught? That's something to think about, right? What I would say to that is this. Authenticity is really important. Confidence is really important, like I talked about earlier. And then somebody who's paid the price and developed the knowledge or skill to be a contributor is really important. And when you combine all those things, I think that leadership emerges from that. But if you just have somebody that wants to strive to be a leader without the foundation of those things, then that tends to be annoying. Nobody wants to follow that person, up the hill when it's time to go. And so I think you have to be authentic. You have to be confident. You have to put in the price, gain the skills, the knowledge necessary, and then be yourself. Because one of the things about leadership that I've always loved is that everybody wants to be it, but in so doing, they really become a follower. The very word itself means that you've done something different or new in your way. And so you can lead in a variety of ways and be your own type of leader. And that's going to be because what you bring to the table is really important that nobody else does. And so be yourself and people will follow that. If you try to be like somebody that you're not, that's going to be very obvious.
When you think about leadership, it's really just the summation of a lot of different traits, right? And most of them have been mentioned up here today. And as I've gone through my career, it's been really interesting because Larry had a huge appetite for growth. And part of growth, a byproduct of growth is it created a lot of opportunities. And what's interesting to me, first of all, is that not everybody wants or has a desire to seek out more opportunity, right? And so you gotta figure out what it is you want to do and where it is you want to go, and because everybody's a little bit different, and but the communication part of it, the authenticity part of it, the integrity part of it, um, you have to have all those things. But when we look at leaders in our organization, a lot of them have just they've come up through the system. They've done a really good job, in each of their respective assignments, whatever they were along the way. And as you go through that process, you continue to learn a lot. People pay attention, and the natural byproduct of that, I think, is leadership. So
I want to mention one other thing that will illustrate a point. I think everybody plays a different position on the team, and it's really good. It's really important to be good at your position. Joe Wingles, in my opinion, is one of the best leaders on the Utah Jazz's team. And it's not because Joe's the guy that's standing and speaking in every team huddle or in the locker room, but Joe does what he does incredibly well. He's a connector. He plays defense. He passes. He hits the three, and that's it. He doesn't need to do other things. And sometimes we undervalue just playing your role really well. And that's an important thing in any team. That for a team to be successful, you need that.
Both great descriptions. One little addition to leadership that I really think manifests a very successful leader, and I use Larry, and Steve and Dean are two incredible leaders, and that is how the people that are following them are acting. If they're trying to emulate and are excited to be behind them, they're great leaders. I remember Larry would, on Tuesday nights, I guess Gail had a relief society or something, so he knew Tuesday night was all open, and he'd grab me about 5, and I'd usually try to get a phone call into Jennifer saying, it's going to be a late one. And by the end of that night, even though I'm rolling out of there at 8 or 9, we've just talked business. I'm so excited to be working with this guy because of the vision and the great leader that he is. And Larry was actually a much better leader than he was a manager. He wasn't really a very good manager. He even would say, I'm not that good at running a business, but he was a great leader. And it's really exciting to follow somebody that you can really emulate. And so if you're looking for one thing, find a mentor who is a great leader and try to emulate that. That'll help.
a big part of it also is just it's all about people, and the more people that you can help get where they want to go, the leadership part of it is just a natural byproduct. So it's really about other people and what they're trying to achieve, and helping them get to where they want to go. And when you're successful at that, the leadership part of it is just a natural byproduct. Haven't given me enough information yet to say yes. And so a lot of time rejection is just part of the process. Don't personalize it.
That's great. That's great. I think that's what we have time for. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to join us up here at Utah State today. Thanks, everyone.
Before we allow Clark and Steve and Dean to leave us today, we have our Taste of Logan from the Huntsman School of Business, and want to thank them for participating here with us today. Let's go ahead and give them one more round of applause.